What if Christianity taught you to see the world in a way that quietly limits you, shaping how you see yourself, your self-worth, your relationships, and even what you believe is possible in your career choices and business ventures? Imagine discovering that a way of thinking you've always taken for granted has held you back. By uncovering this hidden programming, called dualistic thinking, you could finally see the world and yourself with a clarity and compassion you may not have known was possible. Understanding this mindset could transform your experience of life in ways you've never imagined. Section 1. Identifying dualistic thinking. What is dualistic thinking? Dualistic thinking divides the world into good or evil, saved or lost, and Christianity has weaponized this mindset for centuries. It's not just about religious rules, though. It seeps into how we judge our worth, our relationships, and even our dreams. Christianity doesn't just teach you to live morally, it teaches you to mistrust your own judgment, replacing your inner compass with a rigid framework that often feels more like control than guidance. Have you ever felt like you're either perfectly good or completely flawed, with no room in between? This is dualistic thinking, often reinforced by Christianity, but also found in our daily judgments. What if seeing beyond these black and white categories could reveal a more compassionate, empowering view of yourself? Imagine waking up each day with a lightness in your heart, free from the fear of judgment, whether it's the disapproving looks of others or the weight of religious guilt. Breaking free from dualistic thinking offers this freedom, a life where self-compassion replaces self-criticism and inner peace becomes your daily companion. Christianity drills dualistic thinking into us. You're either saved or lost, righteous or sinful, worthy of love or destined for hell. This black and white thinking doesn't stay in church. It infects your everyday life. How many times have you punished yourself for not being good enough or felt like you failed God for being human? These beliefs train you to be your harshest critic, trapping you in cycles of shame and perfectionism long after you've left the faith. For years, I used to tell people, I'm my harshest critic. It sounded humble, even admirable. But in truth, that mindset was like an invisible ceiling, keeping me stuck in my comfort zone and afraid to dream bigger. Fear of failure wasn't just a hurdle, it was a wall I couldn't see past. As we start to recognize these dualistic thoughts, like feeling your day is ruined over one small mistake, we begin to see how these rigid labels, often influenced by Christian teachings, can deeply affect our mental and emotional well-being. But noticing these patterns can be a first step towards self-compassion, freeing us from the pressure of unrealistic perfection. Dualistic thinking, especially in Christian teachings, can lead us to judge ourselves harshly, seeing setbacks as failures or sinful weaknesses that could be our punishment or getting trapped in the guilt of unworthiness. Imagine if you didn't need to label every experience as good or bad, but instead could see each as part of a larger journey. One approach I teach to break this cycle is the observer spotlight method. This technique helps you take a step back from your immediate judgments and observe your thoughts and emotions without labeling them as good or bad. By doing this, you create space to reframe these thoughts into something more empowering. For example, instead of feeling like a failure for a small mistake, you start seeing it as part of your growth journey. These labels don't just reinforce self-criticism. They are the tools Christianity uses to control you. The stress, the guilt, the impossible standards, these aren't accidents. They're features of the system. Breaking free isn't just an option, it's survival. Imagine how different life might feel if each misstep wasn't labeled as a sin or a failure. Could there be a way to grow and learn that offers compassion instead of guilt? A way to embrace all parts of yourself? Imagine wearing glasses that only show the world in black and white, where everything is one extreme or the other. Through Christianity, these glasses often become a part of us, making us miss the full spectrum of human experience. But when we take them off, suddenly color appears. Life's complexities and our own worth come into clearer view, revealing the depth we've been missing. Imagine removing these black and white glasses and seeing color for the first time. Think about how much more vibrant life could feel and how much more yourself you might discover when you free yourself from this rigid way of thinking. Section 2. The psychological toll of original sin and how to reclaim your worth. The doctrine of original sin versus self-worth and growth. In Christianity, the concept of original sin teaches that humanity is fundamentally flawed and begins life at a deficit, needing salvation to be considered worthy. This belief, based on passages like Genesis chapter 3 verses 6 and 7, the fall of Adam and Eve, and Romans chapter 5 verse 12, which states, "Therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin, and so death spread to all men because all sin," is often cited to argue that all humanity is inherently sinful from birth. For those who've grown up with these teachings, this perspective doesn't just shape their view of salvation. It forms a core belief that frames their entire worldview. It teaches us to see ourselves as fundamentally broken, always striving to earn worthiness. Even after leaving the faith, this belief often remains ingrained, making self-acceptance a constant struggle. Even in situations far removed from religious settings, it becomes an invisible lens through which we judge our worth, our relationships, and our ability to grow. What if this belief that we were inherently flawed isn't just a religious idea, but a deeply ingrained core belief shaping how we see ourselves and the world? Could it be that the belief traps us in a cycle of self-criticism, reinforcing the idea that every mistake is a moral failure? Imagine how freeing it could be to challenge this worldview and see your journey through a new lens, one grounded in growth and self-compassion. Internalizing this doctrine of original sin often embeds itself as a core belief, leading to ongoing self-judgment and shame. It teaches us to view even natural impulses as sin, shaping our worldview in ways that affect every aspect of life, from relationships to careers. These deeply rooted beliefs act as hidden barriers, keeping us from feeling fully worthy, capable, and free to grow. Studies show that core beliefs rooted in self-criticism, such as these reinforced by doctrines like original sin, often fuel anxiety and depression. These beliefs create a lens through which we judge ourselves harshly, making self-acceptance feel like an unreachable goal. Letting go of this ingrained worldview can open new doors to healing and self-recovery. Here's a healing frame. Breaking free from this core belief system means letting go of rigid standards, like good or sinful, and embracing our journey as an evolving path of growth. We're not here to prove our worth to anyone, not a deity or society. When we challenge these ingrained worldviews and focus on progress, we can find compassion for ourselves and honor each step forward, letting our personal evolution define our worth. Imagine viewing each challenge as a stepping stone rather than a moral failure dictated by ingrained beliefs. Each experience becomes an opportunity to grow and expand, free from the invisible constraints of a worldview rooted in original sin. This mindset shift can feel incredibly freeing, allowing us to move forward with clarity, self-compassion, and confidence. Eternal damnation versus personal evolution. The concept of eternal damnation in Christianity frames mistakes and sins as threats to one's eternal destiny, fostering a fear-based relationship with faith. Passages like Matthew chapter 25 verse 46, eternal punishment, and Revelation chapter 20 verse 10, the lake of fire, are often cited to warn those who stray are condemned, created an atmosphere of fear rather than openness to grow. For many, this fear extends beyond religion and begins to shape daily life, making every decision feel like it carries the weight of irreversible consequence. The fear of eternal damnation creates a powerful core belief that shapes decision-making and self-perception, turning mistakes into existential threats. This worldview fosters a fear-based relationship with faith that seeps into daily life, affecting how we see ourselves and our ability to grow. Consider how the fear of eternal punishment creates a fixation on perfection and fear of getting it wrong, stifling genuine growth. How can we be free to evolve if every mistake feels like a failure that leads to punishment? What if growth, rather than fear, were the foundation of our journey? The psychological impact is this. The fear of eternal punishment creates lasting anxiety, guilt, and self-doubt. For many who've left Christianity, the fear of divine judgment can morph into harsh self-judgment, feeding cycles of criticism and making it difficult to feel worthy or self-forgiveness or compassion. This mindset can drain mental health, making it hard to trust oneself and move forward confidently. Psychologists find that a constant fear of judgment can keep us stuck, preventing us from seeing mistakes as opportunities to learn. The fear of hell intensifies this, making growth seem impossible. But by reframing mistakes as lessons, we open the door to healing and self-acceptance. Here's a healing reframe. Shifting from punishment to personal evolution helps us see life through a healthier, more balanced lens. Mistakes are simply part of learning, not indications of eternal condemnation. By viewing challenges as growth opportunities, we become more resilient, embrace self-forgiveness, and allow ourselves the freedom to define our own path. Imagine if each mistake were simply a lesson, not a moral failure. How would your life change if each experience became a chance to grow rather than something to fear or regret? This shift allows us to live more openly, embracing growth instead of judgment. Section 3. Suppression of natural desires versus acceptance of our humanity. A dualistic interpretation. Desire as inherently sinful versus integrating the whole self. In Christian doctrine, natural desires, especially those related to bodily and emotional needs, are often framed as inherently sinful or of the flesh. Passages like Galatians chapter 5 verses 16 and 17, for the flesh desires what is contrary to the spirit. And 1 Corinthians chapter 6 verses 18 through 20, warnings against immorality. They teach that these desires should be avoided or suppressed. This perspective creates a harmful division within us, treating our physical and emotional needs as barriers to spirituality rather than essential parts of our humanity. By doing so, Christianity fosters a rejection of our wholeness and forces us to disown parts of ourselves. What if spirituality wasn't about rejecting or suppressing parts of ourselves, but about embracing and integrating them? Could our natural desires, when acknowledged and understood, actually serve as pathways to deeper awareness? Instead of casting our shadows aside, what if we saw them as opportunities for growth? In the pre-Christian Kemetic framework, the body and soul are not adversaries. They're interconnected, equally vital to spiritual consciousness. True growth begins when we illuminate our shadows, understanding and integrating all parts of ourselves rather than dividing them into good or sinful. Christianity has created a false divide between what is considered spiritual and what's not, forcing us to choose between seeking transcendence and living fully. This division alienates many people from spirituality altogether, making it feel like a rejection of the self rather than a path toward wholeness. But integration shows us that there is no separation between living life and personal growth. They're one and the same. When we embrace this perspective, we can stop compartmentalizing ourselves and start seeing every part of life as an opportunity for spiritual and personal development. Psychological impact. The harm of rejecting ourselves. Treating natural desires as sinful doesn't just suppress impulses, it creates deep fractures within us. This rejection of core aspects of our humanity leads to inner conflict, shame, and the perpetual judgment of our own thoughts and feelings. When we're taught to fear or suppress these shadows, we lose the opportunity to explore, understand, and integrate them, leaving us feeling fragmented and disconnected from who we truly are. Research shows that suppressing natural desires and rejecting parts of ourselves can lead to increased anxiety, self-doubt, and feelings of inauthenticity. In striving for perfection, we often miss the richness of human experience. By learning to embrace and integrate all parts of ourselves, including the parts we've been taught to fear or reject, we cultivate wholeness, authenticity, and mental well-being. The healing reframe, illuminating shadows for growth. Moving beyond this dualistic perspective means recognizing our desires and shadows as reflections of our inner world, offering valuable feedback rather than obstacles to overcome. In the ancient Kemetic tradition, life is understood as an interconnected system where the external mirrors the internal. Our experiences, challenges, and desires serves as guides to understanding our deepest thoughts and beliefs. By approaching all parts of ourselves with curiosity and compassion, we can illuminate and integrate our shadows, allowing us to live in harmony with the philosophy that we are born divine rather than sinful and wicked. This alignment process transforms life into a tool for growth, where every experience becomes an opportunity to evolve. In embracing this holistic perspective, spirituality is no longer about judgment or perfection, but about cultivating wholeness and self-acceptance, guided by the wisdom that life is a mirror that reflects back to us the essence of our beliefs and desires. Imagine a philosophy and spiritual journey where you don't have to reject or deny any part of yourself. Instead of battling your shadows, you could shine a light on them and see them for what they truly are, valuable feedback from your inner world. What if every challenge, desire, and setback wasn't something to overcome, but an opportunity to understand yourself more deeply? This kind of spiritual path doesn't demand perfection or judgment. It invites you to embrace wholeness. By honoring every part of who you are and seeing your external experiences as reflections of your internal growth, you can find true peace, alignment, and authentic connection to yourself. Section 4. Us versus them mentality and social isolation. Dualistic interpretation. Believers as saved, non-believers as lost. In Christianity, a strong divide often exists between believers and non-believers, with passages like 2 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 14. Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. And John chapter 15 verse 19. If you were of the world will love you as its own. Reinforcing this separation, this framing creates a clear boundary, labeling others as lost or even sinful, fostering an us versus them mentality. If love and compassion are core values, could dividing the world into us and them actually undermine those values? Instead of truly seeing others, does this mindset close us off from understanding who they are? What would it mean to connect with people based on shared humanity rather than differences? The psychological impact, isolation and mistrust. An us versus them mindset often leads to mistrust and even fear of those with different beliefs, limiting our social circles and encouraging isolation. For those deconstructing faith, this ingrained separation can feel especially alienating, making it difficult to connect with others or engage in open-minded exploration. Over time, this isolation narrows our worldview, keeping us from the growth and connection we deeply crave. Studies show that isolation and social distrust are linked to mental health issues like anxiety and loneliness. By cutting ourselves off from those outside our form of faith, we miss out on the richness of genuine human connection and understanding, which can be a vital part of personal growth and healing. The healing reframe. Moving beyond the us versus them mindset opens the door to more inclusive spirituality, one that values unity and shared humanity. This shift allows us to engage with others in authentic ways, finding meaning in connections based on empathy and common experiences, not boundaries. Embracing this perspective nurtures a compassionate, open-minded spiritual life that sees value in all people, regardless of belief. Imagine the freedom of entering a conversation without the filter of us versus them. How much richer could our connections be if we focused on what unites us rather than divides us? Embracing this mindset frees us to explore new perspectives and build relationships that are both meaningful and healing. Section 5. External salvation versus self-agency and inner trust. Dualistic interpretation. worthiness through an external savior versus self-empowerment. In many Christian teachings, salvation and worthiness are found through reliance on an external savior or authority rather than oneself. Passages like Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 through 6, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9, the heart is deceitful above all things, reinforce the idea that inner guidance is unreliable or even dangerous, encouraging trust in an outside force for validation and guidance. If we're taught to distrust our own hearts, how can we truly come to know ourselves? What if, instead of fearing our inner voice, we saw it as a pathway to self-discovery and spiritual growth? Could it be that learning to trust ourselves is a deeper, more fulfilling form of guidance? Psychological impact, self-doubt, and reduced agency. Relying solely on an external source for worthiness and direction often weakens our own confidence in our own abilities. When our sense of validation comes from outside, it can foster self-doubt and make it challenging to approach life with resilience and confidence. Over time, dismissing our own intuition limits our personal agency, leaving us feeling ungrounded and disconnected from our inner wisdom. Psychologists have found that heavy reliance on external validation is linked to anxiety and reduced resilience. Developing self-agency, trusting in our own decision-making ability, has been shown to improve mental well-being, helping us feel more grounded and confident in ourselves. The healing reframe, cultivating self-reliance and inner wisdom. Moving toward the need for external validation allows us to cultivate a spirituality rooted in self-trust. Building self-reliance means viewing our inner guidance as a source of wisdom, one that works in harmony with any outside knowledge we choose to explore. Embracing self-agency fosters resilience, strengthens self-worth, and opens the door to a more personal and empowering journey. Imagine trusting yourself fully and seeing your inner voice as a guide to wisdom. How much more empowered would you feel if worthiness and guidance had been within you all along? Section 6. The psychological impact of dualistic thinking. Effects on self-perception. Dualistic thinking in Christianity often forces us to label ourselves as good or bad, worthy or unworthy, righteous or sinful. These rigid categories fracture our self-perception, making it difficult to see ourselves as whole, evolving beings. This mindset extends into our relationships, encouraging judgment and blocking our ability to accept others and ourselves in their full complexity. If every misstep labeled us as unworthy in Christianity, how could we ever feel whole? What if the key to inner peace isn't perfection, but reclaiming the parts of ourselves we were taught to reject? Moving beyond the rigid labels could be the first step toward true acceptance. Strategies for deconstructing dualism. Number 1, self-compassion. Practicing self-compassion means responding to ourselves with kindness instead of judgment, especially in moments when we feel like we've fallen short of past religious expectations. In Christianity, the ideal of perfection can feel like an impossible standard, often fueling harsh self-criticism. But true self-growth is about progress, not perfection. By embracing gentleness, we allow mistakes to be part of our journey rather than defining failures. Imagine how different life might feel if instead of judging ourselves as sinful for each misstep, we met those moments with understanding. Self-compassion can be a bridge to a more peaceful and accepting view of ourselves. Number 2, exploring nuance. Life is as rarely as simple as black and white. Recognizing the gray areas, the contradictions and complexities free us from the constraints of extreme thinking. Christianity often frames life as an all or nothing struggle, but by embracing nuance, we reclaim our capacity to see ourselves and others as inherently whole and multifaceted. Life is filled with both and situations, where experiences can be both challenging and enlightening, where we can embody both strength and growth. Embracing nuance frees us to see ourselves as inherently whole and divine, moving beyond limiting labels. This shift allows us to explore life more fully, appreciating each moment as part of our evolving journey. Number 3, reflection and community support. Healing from the dualistic mindset often involves connecting with others who are on a similar journey. Talking with others who are deconstructing, finding supportive communities, or seeking therapy can help us gain new perspectives, breaking down judgment and isolation. Being part of a compassionate community can help us rewrite our self-narratives and recognize our inherent value beyond any label. What if healing isn't something we have to do alone, but something we can discover through meaningful connections? Being seen and supported by others can be transformative, helping us see that we're valued in ways that strict categories never could. Section 7. Moving beyond dualism. Embracing growth and self-compassion. Moving beyond dualistic thinking invites us to see life as an evolving journey rather than a rigid test of right or wrong. In this perspective, every experience, whether joyful or painful, becomes part of our growth, free from the weight of sin or failure. By embracing the process, we cultivate self-compassion and free ourselves from the perfectionism that dualism imposes, allowing us to live more authentically. What if every experience, whether good or bad, was simply part of your growth, not a test of worthiness? Imagine the freedom of seeing yourself as continuously evolving rather than in consistent need of forgiveness or approval. Reconnecting with inner wisdom. Moving beyond dualistic thinking reconnects us with our inner wisdom, helping us trust the insights that come from within. By honoring our experiences as sources of truth while thoughtfully considering outside perspectives, we cultivate a balanced approach to self-guidance. This integration builds resilience and confidence, allowing us to live authentically, guided by our own voice and supported by the wisdom we choose to embrace. Imagine treating your intuition as a trusted guide, harmonizing it with insights from others rather than choosing one over the other. This approach creates a more genuine, self-directed path, one that honors your unique experiences as sources of wisdom. Moving beyond Christian dualism encourages us to form communities that celebrate the complexity of human experience. Instead of dividing people into saved or lost, we can embrace each person as a whole, nuanced individual. This shift fosters meaningful relationships and inclusive spirituality rooted in compassion and genuine connection, free from judgment. What if, instead of seeking sameness, we celebrated a diversity of experiences and ideas? Building open-minded communities allows us to grow in ways that restrictive, binary thinking could never allow. Section 8. Integration. Takeaways on self-worth beyond dualism. True self-worth and personal growth don't come from conforming to rigid labels or categories, but from embracing the full spectrum of who we are, our nuanced and whole selves. Letting go of binary judgments like good or bad, saved or sinful, creates room for a more compassionate and authentic relationship with ourselves, one that celebrates our unique complexities and humanity. Breaking free from dualistic thinking isn't just an intellectual shift. It's about transforming how you experience your life every day. A technique I teach, the polarity seesaw, helps you uncover the limiting beliefs that have shaped your self-perception and reconnect with your authentic, empowered self. By embracing practices like this, you open the door to living with greater clarity, resilience, and alignment with your true nature. What if your worth wasn't tied to any label, belief system, or religious rule? Imagine the freedom of seeing yourself not as perfect or flawed, but as whole, an ever-evolving being whose value has never depended on external definitions. To bring this journey full circle, reflect on where dualistic thinking still shows up in your life. How does it shape the way you see yourself and others? What judgments have become automatic, and where might they be holding you back? By observing these patterns with curiosity and compassion, you can begin to dismantle them and reclaim a more liberated, authentic perspective. This shift allows you to step into a life free from limiting categories and rooted in acceptance, growth, and wholeness that's always been within you. As long as you cling to this programming, You'll keep living under a shadow of someone else's rules. Rules designed to keep you small, ashamed, and dependent. But breaking free isn't just about rejecting those beliefs. It's about reclaiming your power to define your own life, free from the chains of doctrine that never served you. What if each time a judgmental thought surfaced, you paused and asked, what is this thought reflecting about me, and how can I grow from it? By seeing these patterns as opportunities for insight rather than self-criticism, you can begin to reframe them with compassion. Each small shift brings you closer to a life of freedom, inner peace, and true acceptance. If you're ready to reconnect with your inner wisdom and reclaim the power to define your own life, I invite you to explore our free guide to developing your internal locus of control with Metaphysics, Soul-Level Operating System. The link to download it is in the video description. This guide offers practical tools to help you move from external programming to a life guided by your inner truth. Thank you for watching. If this video resonated with you, please consider subscribing and sharing it to help spread these empowering ideas. Together, we're rediscovering the ancient wisdom and building a world rooted in self-awareness, integration, and authentic freedom.